for like the third straight week, it's like we have beautiful weekends, horrible weeks. It's like bitterly cold and then nice and warm on the weekends. It's beautiful. And I will take your advice into account, and I will get outside today and do something with my life, just so you're aware of that. As we continue on, we are continuing on our perfect mix. And what we're looking at is this, is that the Bible really gives us the perfect mix of ingredients. And it says if you would put these things in your church environment, you would have a church that would succeed for the kingdom of God, that would thrive and do things that you can't even fully imagine the impact that it could have on the society that the church is in. And so we're taking these different qualities and looking at them. The first 2 weeks, we've done these two. We've done truth, and last week we did worship, and we hit on both of those. This week we get into one that I would say is, this one's going to be more tedious. This is not one of those that you go, wow, that was fantastic, and you're going to get a lot. But I will tell you this. It's just as important for you to understand as a church as all the rest of what we're going to talk about. Today's ingredient, the third one, is this. It is leadership. Godly leadership in a church. And here's the thing about leadership in a church. It is unique from every other form of leadership in this world because of this fact. The people that choose to follow the leadership of the church do so willfully. You voluntarily do that. It is not something you have to do. It is not something that I even have the ability to get you to do. You go, I choose to follow their lead, because none of your paychecks rely on me or the other elders of this church. So it's not like I can go, you didn't come to church Sunday, I'm docking your pay. All right, you didn't show up for the last 3 weeks, guess what? You're fired. No, I'm going, you didn't come in 3 weeks, would you please come back, because you need to be in the body of Christ. All right, you need to be around God's people. So it's a voluntary thing. So what I'm going to do is just to illustrate the importance of leadership, I need your help. I'm going to show you some pictures of companies. If you believe they have good leadership, I'll have you just raise your hand and go, yeah, I think that's a company that's with good leadership. If you don't, keep your hands down. If you don't participate, you're saying they're bad leadership. So you got to participate. All right, so this one you can't check out. So here we go. Some pictures of companies. The first one we have, BlackBerry. BlackBerry currently, would you say, does that have good leadership or bad leadership? If you think it has good leadership, raise your hand. No one. How many of you know what BlackBerry is? Okay, most of you, because so you're saying no. The reason you all say this is you all know 6 to 7 years ago, BlackBerry was the cutting edge of all mobile phones. Everybody wanted a BlackBerry. Now you can barely buy them. Something's gone really wrong. They haven't stayed competitive. And now you can go get them, but nobody buys them. So it's understandable that one hand goes up. All right, let me get the next company. Google. Good company? Good leadership? Everybody puts their hands up. Why? Because they make Googles of money. All right? How many of you have a Google product on you right now? All right, that's like 3/4 of the church. Google has to have good leadership. Agree with them or not, they have good leadership. All right, next one. Blockbuster Video. Good leadership? Raise your hand. No. Okay, because I think they just closed their last shop like a couple months ago. They're one of them. At one point, they were cutting edge. They led the field. They had good leadership, but somewhere they lost it. They just don't have good leadership, and we all recognize that. Next picture. Ford. Now, take your bias away from all of you people who are anti-different car companies because I'm a Chrysler guy or I'm a GM guy. Just Ford in general, putting your emotions aside. Good leadership? Okay. Good leadership. Most of us would say they were the one company that didn't take like a bailout, and now they're succeeding more than the other two companies, even though they didn't take one, and they've done really well through everything, and they seem to be succeeding. All right, next one. Enron. Jordan, there we go. All right. Okay. Well, how many of you remember Enron? Enron was a Ponzi scheme. I think it's in Texas, so you guys are even more closer. Did you have people actually in Tulsa that were connected to them, being in the oil business here? Okay, there might have been some. But Enron, we all look at and go, no, horrible leadership. They were all indicted and they're in prison and whatever else now. All right, last one. Walmart. Good leadership? All right, you can agree with them or not, but they're the largest company in the world. They have to have good leadership or they just wouldn't be. The operation they do, you have to have good leadership. But the point is this, leadership is essential to something being healthy, including the church. For any company, any organization, leadership is the thing that defines, is it going to be healthy or is it not going to be healthy? And that carries over into the church the same way. So what we're going to do this morning is this. We're going to go through and look at the leaders of the church, which we rarely do. We don't talk about this much. It does get a little tedious. I'm going to make it as entertaining as I can. So if I have to dance in the middle of it to keep you awake, we'll do it. But this is I can't tell you how much, very important for you to understand. Because your leadership of the church will have a huge impact on if it can thrive for God. So first, let me do this. Elders, before we get into this, elders, would you stand if you're in here? I think most of you are. Just stand up, because I want you to know who these men are. And wives, stand next to them so they see you too, because you're part of them in this stuff. So wives, stand up next to them if they're in here. Let me tell you who you got, so keep standing for a second. Over in the back over here, you have Jerry Inslee. All right, so that's Jerry Inslee. Get to know his face. He's one of our elders. Right over here, you have Jim Scott, and Paul is with him. So right there, and then over this way, you have Mark and Teresa Bussey. That's our elders. You have Ken Hurd. Where's Ken? Oh, Ken's all the way in the back. You got to turn around, look all the way back at Ken. Ken's all the way in the back. He's turned. No, not you, Ken. Okay, Ken's back there, and the last one you have is Rick Whitehead. He's actually working over in the toddler room right now. So he's over that way, and then I'm the sixth one that we currently have at the church. Know who they are. Deacons, if you're in here real quick. We have, I think, 3 currently. So stand up, deacons and their wives, if they're with you. Linda doesn't want to, but you are. Okay, we have Jim Steele. These are our deacons. And then you have James Hearns right back here. And then our third one is Rick Bolin, who's actually in the hospital currently, so he can't be here. He's in decent shape, but he's still having antibiotics or something through his bloodstream to get rid of E. coli. So that's where he is. Okay, you guys can sit down. Those are your leaders of this church right now. So let me talk about what your expectations should be of them, because here's what we know. Character is the absolute 100% thing that leaders are all about in the church. It is the defining thing, character. It's what it all comes down to. It's what the scriptures talk about and spend so much time about. It leaves very little to the imagination. It's pretty clear. So let me share these with you. Here is the character of what you should desire in these men that I just had stand up. This is who they should be. And what I would say here is if we're sweating and we don't want to hear these, we shouldn't be in leadership because we have issues. But this is the qualifications of leaders, and I have no problem with the guys I had stand up. No, that's what their character is. I know them. I know them well enough to go, that's who these guys are. Here's what it says. 1 Timothy. Paul lines this out. Read along with me, and I'm going to explain some of this to you as we go through. It says this. This is a trustworthy saying. If someone aspires to be an elder, which are the guys who lead the spiritual progression of the church and the oversight of the church, if someone aspires to be an elder, he desires an honorable position. So an elder must be a man whose life is above reproach. Let's stop. The first qualification, he says, basically their life is above reproach, means you can't criticize them. They don't have anything that you can just look at and go, boom. What a way to start off. So I said it's all about character. That's how it starts, and then he goes into defining what that looks like. Here's what he goes on. He says, so an elder must be a man whose life is above reproach. He says, he must be faithful to his wife. The way most of you have always heard this is a husband of one wife. Now, this one's led to a lot of confusion in the church world. As people go, husband of one wife, and it's always been debated, does that mean a divorced guy can be an elder or a deacon because he's had multiple wives? Or was it talking about back then where you still had a remnant that had multiple wives and going, it's got to be a guy who has one wife? All right, I don't even like the description here where it says faithful to his wife. That's not really an accurate translation of the Greek. It was a husband of one wife. Now, the debate's always been, what is it? So can a divorced guy be or not? It's actually very easy to understand. What it was is it was saying your elders had to be a guy that's married to one person at the time. They can't have multiple wives. Reason being, you go, how do you know it's that clear? Because the same author uses the word divorce. There was a Greek word for divorce that they write all the time throughout the New Testament, and that's not the word they used here. They used specifically a Greek phrase that meant a husband of one wife, which means if they didn't use the divorce one, they would have used it. It meant they're not married to 3 different women at the same time. All right, so it says, the first thing, here it says must be faithful to his wife, but really it means they must not be someone that has multiple wives. He must exercise self-control, live wisely, and have a good reputation. So we see that next part, which is these are guys who are wise. They should have a good reputation. That's who your leaders are to be. He must enjoy having guests in his home. Let me stop you for a second here. This is another a cultural thing you have to understand. This did not mean I want to go, hey, why don't all of you guys come over to my house all the time and we hang out? What this meant was Jewish custom was if someone traveling through town came into your town, this town or the village or whatever was responsible to put that person up when they came into town. So you weren't just left outside. You were someone in the town was to, especially the elders of the town, let them come in and be hospitable to them and let them stay the night, take care of them, provide their needs for them. This is what this is saying to the elders of your church, meaning they must be a good reputation and they must enjoy having guests in their home. If someone's in need in the body, these leaders should be going, yeah, I can help fill that need. The way I interpret it for modern church, they are guys, when they see a need, they do what they can to meet it. That's how I would interpret and make a parallel between the ancient culture to our culture. All right? The next thing we see, it says this, they must be able to teach. He must not be a heavy drinker. Does not say here they can't drink. Just don't be getting drunk, as we see in other parts of the scriptures. That there are to be people that are not heavy drinkers. They don't lose control. They're not drunk. That's another thing. They're not to be violent. He must be gentle, not quarrelsome, and not love money. He must manage his own family well, having children who respect and obey him. This is one we struggle with. If you've been in church any amount of time, we hate doing this one. Do we really want to look at their kids? Well, according to the scriptures, absolutely. Look at their kids. See if their kids are well-behaved. See if their kids respect them. And he says right after that, for if a man cannot manage his own household, how can he take care of God's church? He actually spends some time talking about, and it's one we often overlook. The guy can't manage his household well. How's he going to manage the church and oversee that body? You need to be aware of that. That means to be an expectation of you. Now, don't look at my children. We're not going there. We're talking about the other elders, all right? Not mine. Now, my kids are usually fairly well. Yeah, okay. But here's what, let me say this on a side note. This is what I hate. It's this scripture that talks about where we have a joke, ministers' kids, right? According to this, if you're a minister, you want to consider them an elder, that shouldn't be. It's telling you there's something wrong at home. It's telling you it's not everything they're appearing to be if the kids are a total disaster. There should be some accountability. It goes on. It says an elder must not be a new believer because he might become proud and the devil would cause him to fall. Also, people outside the church must speak well of him so he will not be disgraced and fall into the devil's trap. So here it goes into even, it's not just their life here that you see here, it's their life outside of this place. And they need to be spoken of well. They need to be respected even outside this place, that they should be people even in our society that people go, good guy, good Christian person. It goes on, it says, in the same way, then it goes into deacons. Deacons who are servants of the church with like this defined role of a servant. It says, in the same way, deacons must be well respected and have integrity. They must not be heavy drinkers or dishonest with money. They must be committed to the mysteries of the faith now revealed and must live with a clear conscience before they are appointed as deacons. Let them be closely examined if they pass a test, and let them serve as deacons. And then it goes into this, and I don't know if this is a total reference just to deacons or if it's to both groups. I'm not 100% sure, but it's sandwiched between two parts about deacons. So it seems to be at their wives. But obviously, if a deacon's wife is this way, so should be an elder's wife. And it says this, it says, in the same way, their wives must be respected and must not slander others. They must exercise self-control and be faithful in everything they do. And it says a deacon must be faithful to his wife, or a husband of one wife, and he must manage his children and household well. Those who do well as deacons will be rewarded with respect from others and will have an increased confidence in their faith in Christ Jesus. Okay, the scriptures here are very clear on your expectations of your leaders in the church. He lays it all out. These are things we have to take seriously. He goes on, I'm going to read this part too, and Titus is the other major set of scriptures that talk about their character. Here's what it says in Titus. It says, an elder must live a blameless life. He must be faithful to his wife, and his children must be believers who don't have a reputation for being wild or rebellious. An elder is a manager of God's household, so he must live a blameless life. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered. He must not be a heavy drinker, violent, or dishonest with money. Rather, he must enjoy having guests in his house, and he must love what is good. He must live wisely and be just. He must live a devout and disciplined life. He must have a strong belief in a trustworthy message he was taught. Then he'll be able to encourage others with wholesome teaching and show those who oppose it where they are wrong. Okay. Does this sound like high character people? Absolutely. I mean, high character people. The people that are in your leadership of your church should have nothing to do with how long they've been in the church, how long they've been Christians, how much money they have, whatever, what they look like. It should be all about, are they high individuals of character? And if they're not, your responsibility as a church, get rid of them. And the scripture provides you the path to that. Is if there's 2 to 3 witnesses that have evidence that go, they're not meeting these character things, those 2 to 3 witnesses, it says you don't listen to one, but 2 to 3 witnesses come in, and it says then you take them, if it's found to be true, you put them before the congregation and you reprimand them. Why? To put a fear of people. Go, if you're a leader in God's church, consider your character the highest of callings. Because you all know this, and we see this all the time. When you have church leaders that do not have high character, it does more damage to God's kingdom than anything else. Right? How many times do you see on TV ministers who are having affairs, who are doing whatever all over the place, and it comes out and they're in these big congregations or even little congregations, and it destroys that body, it destroys other bodies, and it destroys all of our reputations and makes it harder for us for the rest of the sake of God's call in our lives. And we sit there and go, it's just harder for us now to do it because people perceive us as low character people like them. In this church, we are to have high character. You as a people are to guard about that. You are the guard to make sure our leaders have high character. You should expect nothing less. Now let me move on to the next thing. How are they to lead? Scripture is very clear. It says, here's your character. Here's how they lead. Let me read you 2 scriptures. Matthew 20, 25 through 28. This is Jesus. It says, but Jesus called them together and he said, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over other people, and the officials flaunt their authority with those under them. How many of you had this happen at work? Okay, you know this. I'm your boss. Do what I tell you to do. I'm your boss. I don't care what you have to say. Do what I tell you to do because your paycheck comes from me and your job comes from me. So do what I tell you to do. He says that's how the world works. Absolutely. Most of us know this. But he says this, but among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Here's what we see. How should your leaders in the church lead? They should be your slaves and they should serve you. They should not sit up and just dictate everything to you and just tell you this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do. They should be leading by example in what they do. Now, here's a good thing I can say from my eldership and my leaders here. I know these guys here, and they're all massive servants. They lead different areas of the church. They serve in different ways. They're generous guys. They help out people in need on a continual basis. These guys meet that character, and they meet that leadership way as they lead by example. That's what you have to have. Little example I remember here, when I first hired here, I remember one of the criticisms when they were interviewing me was, what are you going to do about Wednesday nights? No one cleans up. And I started around, it sticks in my head for some reason. I remember the people who were interviewing me was like, so what are you going to do? Because like on Wednesday night, everyone just sits there afterwards and the food's just all left over and no one cleans up and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what are you going to do about that? I'm like, I'll get up and I'll start cleaning. They're like, well, you need to say something. I'm like, no, I don't. I'll just start cleaning. We won't start class until I'm done. And those of you that were here in the early days, you remember this. If we started class late, I would come in and be like, you guys love clean. We would have started 10 minutes earlier. But I've been down there and cleaning. Here's the beauty of it. I now get to go play with kids at 6 to 6:30 with the kids. I don't even think about the cleaning because I can name 15 of you right now that I know when I leave, we'll get up and they'll break the tables down, they'll wash the tables, they'll clean it up. I haven't even seen the process take place in a year and a half. Why? Because you guys just do it now. Why? Your leaders lead. And if your leaders lead, you follow. And they lead by example, not just by issuing orders. All right, that's what we see. First Peter, it carries on how they lead. Care for the flock that God has entrusted you. Watch over it willingly. So if you have elders who are the grumps, oh, I'm just doing this because I got to lead these people up. Get them out of leadership. Okay, they should be doing it willfully. They should be doing it willingly, not grudgingly. Not for what they will get out of it, but because they are eager to serve the Lord. Here's another thing. If you get a sense from your leaders, they're doing it because somehow you benefit them. That somehow you make them feel and you feel something in them and they're just using you as a pawn for their own life. Get rid of them or don't follow them. That's not who they're to be. It goes on and says, don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. Which means their first way of getting you to lead is not to be dictators over you. Their first way is they serve, I serve. I don't even think about it. Why? Because they serve. And if my leaders serve, I'll serve. It's the kingdom of God. That's why we do it. That is to be your expectations of their character and how they lead. Of the men you just saw. That should be, if you are a non-leader, how you view them and go, that should be their expectation. That should be your expectation of me. I'm an elder as well. All those things we should be held accountable to by you, the members of the church. Moving on from there, what is their job then? What are they supposed to do? What are elders? And I'm specifically dealing with elders, deacons. Let me deal real quick. Deacons are a position in the church where they are servants. They might oversee ministries, but they are servants of the church who give extra time than the normal folk that have spiritual integrity, that people look at and go, great Christian examples. And because of that, now they're in a leadership position to minister in that way, but also to lead ministries in the church and to do servant stuff at the church. Elder specific role is this, to guard the integrity of the church, and they're often referred to as shepherds. That they're referred to in the New Testament as shepherds. That's what the elders were. The 6 guys I mentioned at first, so Jerry, Jim, me, Mark, Ken, and Rick back in the nursery. They are shepherds. And what do shepherds do? Here's 3 things I can think of. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm just going to tell you. One thing they do, a shepherd does, is they lead their flock to food and water. All right? And what that would translate to into a spiritual realm is this. Your shepherds are to be people who disciple you. They're to help you find the nourishment in God's kingdom that you need to have to grow, to stay alive. They should lead you to water and food in a spiritual sense. All right? Another thing shepherds do is they protect the flock from harm. Meaning one of their other roles is this, to keep false teachings out of our church. To protect the flock from things that could hurt them and injure their faith. They are to be protectors of that. They are to have their ears to what's going on and be protectors of false teachings. The last thing you see that a shepherd does is they keep the flock together. One of the key things a shepherd does is make sure counting the sheep all the time and keep them together and keep them unified. Another role I would say that the eldership has is to make sure of unity in the church. They keep everybody moving in the same direction. They keep everyone from falling behind or from division starting. And they are to hit those things and take care of those things before they become a dividing point or before parts of the flock are off on their side and lost. That is another role elders are to provide. That is their job. Now, that's all about us. Okay, did you like hearing about us? Let me talk about you. Scripture is also very clear in your role in regards to the eldership. And let me give you what those are. There are some expectations for you. 1 Timothy says it like this. Elders who do their work well should be respected and they should be paid well. Especially those who work hard at both preaching and teaching. So what we see here is if you are not a leader in the church, the scriptures lay this out. Your obligation, if you have a godly leadership, respect them and pay them well. Now, these get a little complicated here because not all of our elders are paid. I'm the only elder here that receives any money from this church. The rest voluntarily do it. I happen to be that elder that fits into those who work hard at both preaching and teaching. That kind of fits my role as an elder. That's usually why churches pay a hired minister, a senior minister, or staff is because they work in that capacity. I don't know how it worked back in biblical times where you might have had multiple elders all getting paid, but not all of them were preacher teachers. I don't know. I can't pretend to even understand that for you. All I can tell you is it says your role, if you have godly leaders, respect them, pay them well. Now, paying well doesn't mean you need to pay me more money. right? That's not what it means. It means pay them enough that they can live comfortably where they're not totally focused all the time on the things of this world, but they're comfortable. Doesn't mean they're rich. Doesn't mean they have all the things of the world. If they're your leaders, they shouldn't be desiring that in the first place. They should be going, I just am here to get by so I can focus fully on the Word of God and presenting that to the church and to this community that they're in. All right? The second obligation you have is this. Obey your spiritual leaders. Do what they say. Now you go, I don't like that. In America, we go, we need to have votes on everything. Well, in the biblical world, no, you didn't. Your elder said, we're doing this. This is what you did. You respected them and you followed their leading. Let me say this. If you have godly leaders, you don't worry about it. The reason we got into all this voting stuff in America is we weren't putting godly people in those positions in the first place. And we went, I don't trust them enough, so we're going to set up voting systems to make sure that we can control them. That wasn't the biblical way it was done. All right? It was obey your spiritual leaders and do what they say. Their work is to watch over your souls, and they are accountable to God. This is where you guys are different than me, Jim, Jerry, the different elders here. We are accountable to God for your lives. You are not accountable to God for mine. I am for yours. Us elders that take that seriously, that's a lot of weight on us. Okay, that's a lot of weight. We are responsible for your spiritual lives. We're accountable before God for them. We won't just answer for our lives, we will answer for yours. And then he goes on and he says this. So he says this to you. Understand they're accountable for your lives. And he says, give them reasons to do this with joy, not with sorrow. So then he says, hey, church, give them reasons to have joy being accountable for your life, not sorrow. Let me tell you what that means. We enjoy nothing more than seeing your lives be transformed and become who God wants you to be. That brings us joy. That lets us sit in meetings and go, look at what God's doing in people's lives. It brings us joy. So what he's saying is this, church members that are non-leaders, why don't you just focus not just on pleasing God, focus on bringing joy to your leaders who have a lot of responsibility and accountability before God. By the way you live your life, live it in such a way that they can sit there and go, man, this is amazing what God's doing, and they have joy in leading. Not where it says here, don't give them reasons to have sorrow, okay? I've witnessed a lot more times where we sit in leadership and feel sorrow. And did you see what happened there? Did you see what's happening with that person's life? Did you see that? He's going, think about your lives and how it affects others. You grow in the Spirit, we receive joy. We go, great. Okay, that is your role. You are to help us have joy. And then the last thing it says is this, in verse 18, it says, pray for us. Paul lays it out, it says, pray for us. For our conscience is clear and we want to live honorably in everything we do. So Paul says, my conscience is clear and I want to live honorably in everything I do. So would you please pray for me to make sure I do that? And that's what I would ask all of you as well. If you are not a leader here, you need to be praying for your leaders. You need to know who they are. They have a lot of stress. They have a lot of responsibility. Outside of me, the rest of them have full-time jobs. Except some of you have retired now, so you're on the easy street now. Never mind, Jim. Now, and Rick just retired. Never mind. They're living it up. That's all I can say. Some of them are living up. Some of the rest, like Jerry back there, and Ken actually work like I do, and we actually do something. But here's the deal. Jim's over there giving me the fiddle. But here's the deal. You are to be praying for us. Why? You want to be led by godly leaders, don't you? Don't you? I mean, how many of you want to show up on a Sunday morning and go, hey, guess what? Scott's been let go because we found out he's had 4 affairs. Do you want that? No, none of us do. We want godly leaders with good character. Hey, you know what? Scott's been let go because we found out he's lying to everybody and he's doing this and that. We don't want that. We have pride in that guy. We have pride in our elders. They're men of character. So pray for it. Pray for protection for us. That's what we're called to. Here's the thing. Godly leadership is a key to the health and the ability of the church to impact the society around it, to be the church God has called it to be. It is not to be taken lightly by the church body. Godly leadership is a must within God's church. Because if its leaders are living the life they're supposed to be living, if they are leading the way they're supposed to be leading, and if the body is doing what they're supposed to be doing, God will do incredible things with his church. And my prayer this morning is this, that we would be a church led by godly leaders with a godly body that would get to see the hand of God move here and impact a society beyond our wildest imaginations. Would you pray with me?